Hi, welcome at Leap 2023. Today I will give you a glance of the toolset which can support you in the move to S/4HANA Cloud. My name is Ingmar. I'm Solution Architect in the team of Westernacher Consulting. I'm part of the Digital Transformation team. In the Digital Transformation team, we support assessments at our customers to define the strategic starting point for an implementation. In our assessments, we create the first starting point, we define the roadmap for your implementation, and we support the implementation in different roles. This could be, for example, in my case, as a solution architect to support and guide the whole full process of the solution implementation. In 1968, there was a new digitalization which was activated in the London Underground. A voice message, which was called over the train, was automated. This voice message read, "Mind the gap." At this point in time, it was not possible to make a recording which was longer than these 3 words. The intent of this message was clear. You step out of the train, you need to mind that there is a gap between the train and the platform. What can happen when you leave a train and when you step on the platform? You are in a train, you see your own circumstances, but you are not aware of the world around you. But you need to take a step on a platform which could be higher, lower, maybe with a big gap, maybe with a small gap. There is a distance, and maybe you will need support for this. In our implementations, we see the same difference. We have a current state, which is a current business situation. Maybe you are aware of what the current state is, but maybe you also have elements where you're not sure about. You need to ensure what this current state is. Where are you? You have a future vision, a strategy. What do you want to accomplish? Do you already know what you want to accomplish? Do you already know where you want to go? That's key, of course, to identify your own gap. Because what is your gap? Today, I will focus on a part of these questions. I will focus on the toolset which can support you to mind this gap. The current state and the future state, and what is the mindset you need to make this move, is a topic which is separately discussed. And this is a focus for one of our next workshops. To define the right strategy and build the vision, we use the vision to value cycle. As a starting point in building the vision, we will align the business and IT strategy and ensure that we really understand this strategy. What do we want to accomplish in the business? And how is the strategy for IT point of view aligning with this business strategy? We need to build the case. We need to ensure that what we want to achieve has value and what the value is. And that we have the right budget to be able to do this implementation. But mainly also to see what current activities do we change in a certain way that we can take a next step in our business process. And we plan the path forward. What is the transition which is needed to make this leap? In the presentation of today, we will use this as our starting point. We know what we want to achieve. This is what we have defined together. We have done a value case. We ensure that we know what we want to do and how we want to do it. And now we are going to start with the definition of the scoping which is needed. From current state to the future vision and strategy is something where we use the why, the how, and the what as definition on how to define the right strategy. Next to this, we want to deliver to promise. To support this, we have a methodology which we use in these elements. The methodology we use have basic components which start with discover, explore, realize, deploy, monitor, and optimize. Partly, this is copied from the methodology which is from Activate. Activate has components which are needed to do a right implementation. These components defined based on the type of implementation cycle you will do. This could be you want to move to S/4HANA Public Cloud in a 2-tier or 3-tier landscape. It could also be that you want to implement a private cloud instance. But also a full roadmap and set of documents is available when you want to make the move to a sustainable enterprise. Activate is the core element of the implementation cycle. But what do you find in this Activate methodology? As a start, you see predefined steps according to the different implementation elements which you need to follow. Next to this, it is giving you a documentation set. Examples of this are presentation materials, for example, to define the right cloud mindset. Second is questionnaires. For example, to set up your system, you need to know what is the customization, but also what is the scoping and validate the scoping. And you have different training materials, which can be used during the whole cycle of the implementation process. Awareness of these elements and components is critical to be able to leverage what is already there. Because the key element of one of the things that I want to accomplish today is to explain to you what is already existing, where you do not need to find out what to do again, because it has already done a lot of times. It gives you a starting point. And the starting point will not be 100%. It will be around 80%. You need to do iterations and upgrades and add your own personal situation. But the starting point will help you and guide you through the elements needed for a successful implementation. When we start a project and when we know what we want to accomplish and what we want to do, a first element is that we use a discovery assessment. A discovery assessment consisting of two key components. One, we will start with a quick pre-qualification. A pre-qualification which is really high level to identify, are you a customer valid for a public cloud implementation, a private cloud implementation, and why? The elements which are measured here are first based on what is your current system landscape. Are you an existing SAP customer or are you a new customer to SAP? And in this also, because if you are an existing customer, is a migration relevant or do you do a greenfield implementation? Second to this, we would like to know what are the countries where we will do the implementation and why? Because a part of the solutions is already predefined for the different countries, but a part of it is not ready yet. And at this point in time, the number of countries supported by, for example, SAP S/4HANA Public Cloud is really already huge. We are, out of the top of my head, 45 countries or more. But not everything is supported. So in some cases, you need changes. You need to adopt. Next question is the element of what is your business industry. Public cloud at this point in time for a lot of industries is already there, ready to be used. But there are some key elements where you need to be aware of when you make a move to a public cloud implementation. When you move to S/4HANA Cloud, you need to change also in accordance to the system. And you need to be aware of the boundaries. And also what you need to do with these boundaries. At last, the sizing of the implementation cycle. How many users will you have? And what is the category of the customer in this case? The combination of these questions will lead into a decision. Is this a public cloud implementation? Or is this a private cloud implementation? Or is this an incubation customer? Incubation means in this case that you are one of the new possible customers for a public cloud implementation. And in this, there will be additional support from SAP point of view. And first, this digital discovery quick assessment will be sent to a brand guardian who will identify if it is a valid case for public cloud and if additional support or specific attention points are needed to be taken into account. When the quick qualification is finalized and you know if you go to a public or a private cloud instance, you have the element to define what are the scope items. Scope items first start with strategy. What kind of implementation are you aiming to do? Is this a finance-led implementation? Is it an implementation organized in relation to a service management organization? Or is it an operational-based organization? This predefines which scope items you will need. The second element here is the countries which are in scope. As said before, the countries are for a part standardized, and we know what kind of solution we need to implement, also from a regulatory and compliance aspect. But in some countries, we do not have all regulations already in the system. So we need to know beforehand. Then we have the scope element. In the scoping, we define what are the processes relevant to you. This is a pre-definition of the different scope elements, and it already gives you a perspective of what is there. What are the elements to reuse in an implementation cycle? And also know what kind of questions you need to ask yourself in the relevancy of a certain process. When we look at the scope items, it contains different types of information to help you. One, a high-level explanation. Second, a link to documentation, which gives you an overview of the process, of the visualization of the process flow, and in some cases also, for example, a video of how the process is run in the system. Last step in the setup is the integrations. What are the integrations which are needed? And what are the integrations that you aim to achieve in the near future? With all these elements, we get a good point of view of your wished process. In these elements, there are also elements which will lead you to further improvements next to implementing a certain process, like automations. This part, mainly for the public cloud implementation, is completely included and gives you a guidance and a starting point to be able to implement automation at the start of your project and adopt this in the implementation cycle. When we have defined the scoping, when we have finished this digital discovery, the next element is how do we start our implementation? What is the information that we use? Key elements in this are one, the best practice processes. A best practice, of course, is a name where the question is, what does it actually mean? In this case, one, it means process flows which are there ready to use, which give a predefined process of how the system could run for you in a certain situation according to a certain process. Next to this, also a starting kit for your personal user interface. Elements like the authorization setup, how the system setup and how the user interface is looking for you at the starting point, per user defined. And also instant intelligent automations. So a starting point to automate your solution processes. These elements are all gathered in the best practices which are available. It is key to know which best practices are there. It is key to know what it contains, which can be customizing, which also can be a technical setup. And it can also conceal different solutions in the solution landscape. And this is there to help you to get a quick understanding, but mainly also to get a quick start for the whole implementation cycle. If you look at the best practices, we see there the Signavio Process Navigator. The Process Navigator is introduced during this year and is integrating the Signavio solution with the S/4HANA implementation cycles. The best practices can be found there, and there's a documentation set which is aligned to these best practices. As said before, we have the digital discovery. We have the explanations of the processes with a definition what you can achieve in the process, but also which process steps are part of the process. You have the process flows. And you have videos, for example, to showcase how the process should be run. This is a starting point. So it means that not everything in this full process is always 100% as how you will define it in a final solution. You have the option to customize some elements and change it a bit. But you want to limit this as much as possible. And mainly also you want to have the guidance from this process flows, define how this process is running for a certain customer, use this as a starting point in fit to standard workshops, because you want to aim to go to this standard, identify the differences on the process flow, which you can do in, for example, the Signavio solution, or in Cloud ALM, Application Lifecycle Management, which I will explain in a later slide, and reuse this to kickstart your implementation cycle. As a side topic, which is a key topic in a lot of implementations, the migration. The migration is a key element in the duration of an implementation project. We have quick starters to really start the discovery. We have the element where we can support, based on best practices, the fit to standard analysis and define, okay, where are my gaps and what do I need to extend? But the element of the migration is critical and also more difficult element to indicate what is the exact effort that you need to do this. As additional support in comparison with 5 months ago, there is a new tool on the field. In the Cloud Application Lifecycle Manager, you have the Business Transformation Center. In all honesty, this is really a new tool. So it means it is still in an adoption phase. It is at a starting point to get bigger and increased. And there is a roadmap for additional functionalities which are added. I present it here more for awareness. This is something which is there and which can help you. And what it does, it indicates which data objects you have in your current system landscape, what is needed to migrate these data objects, and what are the tools which are available as a quick starter. So it gives you more the best practice information based on your current system landscape. What is this type of information? One, it is giving you a guidance for the different objects which are in scope. You have the documents which you can use for loading of the data. You have elements on what is needed for cleansing. So this quick start is something which is really worth it to invest time in, to investigate what is it, how can I use it, and how can I leverage the functionality in my implementation cycle in the near future. When we're used to the full load cycle, so first we have the identification of what is my scoping, what do I need to migrate and how. This is what I presented in the last slide, so the Business Transformation Center. But when you load, you have to select your data, get the data, and migrate this. This is supported by the Data Migration Center. If you look in this, what is key to know here is one, what do you have as pre-selected objects? So for the different objects in SAP, you have predefined objects which define what the values are in your data. So you are able to reuse what is already there, and you don't need to really create new Excel sheets to define which values are existing. What does a value mean? It is there, it is predefined, and is ready to use. There is a key difference between the implementation for a private cloud cycle or a public cloud cycle. In case of a public cloud implementation, you make use of staging tables. In case of a private cloud implementation, you have the option to also directly connect to the external system. Key message for now is know what is there and be able to reuse the existing information. Don't build it yourself manually, start from zero, but use what is there and improve. Now the implementation is starting, you have all the different elements which are needed in the full cycle. We already discussed what is the starting point from the Discovery Center to what is needed for the implementation with the best practices. And now how do we support the full implementation cycle? A critical element here is to use Cloud Application Lifecycle Management. For one, the implementation, two, the test management, and the operational support. The implementation can be supported by reusing what you see in the Activate roadmaps. So you can load the full Activate roadmap and have your whole activity cycle and tasks for your implementation. And next to this, you have the possibility to reuse the information from the digital discovery assessment. So you can load the scope which you have selected there. With this scope, also the process flows are there, which can be used to document changes. So you can adopt the process flows in your application lifecycle management tooling. When you are running through the cycles and maintain what you have done, what is the status of the project, and what you need to do, you also have the test cycle. and a test cycle to test these scope items is integrated in the solution. You have predefined scripts. These scripts sometimes need adoption, for example, to have the right master data to be able to run a script. But these scripts can be run as preparation during your different test cycles, but also during a running operation to ensure that when there are upgrades to the solution, your solution is still running as expected. As last, within operational support, you have the option to monitor your current process, monitor the interfaces and monitor the performance. If we look at this overall perspective, there's one element which could give you an additional support. This element is the tooling of Signavio. In the beginning, I've already said that Signavio is integrated to show you the best practice solutions with the process navigator. But Signavio is giving you the option to support in 3 key elements: in your project preparation, in the implementation, and in the optimization. We started with how do we want to create a continuous innovation cycle. What is key here is 1, we need to know what we have today. How do we perform? And we need to use this to leverage future functionality. What we can do with the Signavio tooling is 1, identify your current system landscape, benchmark this to other customers and to the type of industry you are in, see what are the possible best practice scenarios which you can use to improve. And these best practice scenarios, not only from a process point of view to automate processes inside, for example, an S/4HANA cloud solution, but also leverage the process automation capabilities. For example, the automatic creation of sales orders. This is a predefined available solution which can be used to improve and to prevent manual activities in your operation. This combination of activities will enable you, 1, after you have built the vision, based on the why, the how, and the what, deliver to promise. And deliver to promise not only with the first delivery, but deliver a continuous innovation cycle. Ensure that you are not only implementing this first element, but when you have a running solution, use Cloud ALM to manage your current system landscape. Use the Signavio functionality to monitor how your processes are running and see and identify improvements. And based on these improvements, innovate. One quote which is always on top of mind is one which I would like to use as final element of this presentation. Because it is not how intelligent we are or strong, it is how quick we can adapt. And in the current system landscapes, in the current business organizations, adapt to a changing environment is key. And also what I presented today is the information we have today. But tomorrow it can change. Be aware of the changes, be aware of what is there to leverage and to help you. And I hope that we can help you with this. Thank you.